Let me see here.
Hello. Welcome to the Xirtus.
Synctank.
Ladies and gentlemen, tonight is brought to you by mineral water. Please drink mineral water. Any mineral water. Good to see you guys. How's it
I
going?
like it that tonight is brought to you by, not just
Yeah.
like this show you're watching tonight, but like tonight with the,
Without
like-
mineral water, where would we be? I think it's great. I think mineral water is the coolest thing. It's like bubbly like soda. It's kind of saltier than normal water in just a weird way, which apparently is good for you. And it
Right.
some
It's
people hate
inhabited
it.
by elementals for sure.
Dude, I'm for it. I think it's the way to go.
There was the last big hurricane that we had here that I had to prep for. They were like sold out of water everywhere, and it's good practice to get at least like a few gallons of potable water somewhere. And the only thing I found was actually cheaper than the regular water. It was like this Himalayan salt added, pH balanced,
There you go.
organized something or other.
And you
And
made
I
it.
swear, dude, it like felt like silk drinking.
Yep.
Like, it had this smooth like texture to it that I can't describe fully.
Dude, was it discounted because it sat on the shelf for so long and no one where you live wanted it? Whereas like if it was in
honestly,
California, it'd
Are
just
you
be
one of
all-
those guys who doesn't eat Himalayan rock salt when it expires?
Yeah, I love that.
They're
Like
doing
when you
it.
look at the Himalayan salt, that they're telling you that this is like thousands of years old, and then it has like this expiration date. And you're like, so it's ancient, but
I'm
it
really
just-
glad they got it just now because it was about to go bad. They picked it just in time.
Jesus Christ.
It's really lucky. We're gonna have to talk about Dr. Strangelove for a second at some point because Fast Ed said they did not enjoy or understand, which I think is the same thing sometimes. Not always. There's some
Kubrick
shows.
did a better job of explaining Dr. Strangelove than he has most of his movies. Like he actually and it was in response to a letter he received where somebody basically decoded it, and Kubrick acknowledged that and confirmed it for him that all of Dr. Strangelove is a psychoanalytic sexual metaphor. So from beginning to end, in Kubrick's words. Basically the opening sequence of Dr. Strangelove is a plane refueling, and it's meant to have sexual implications. Like you're looking at a sex act between two planes, basically. And then the explosion at the end is symbolic of orgasm, so it builds towards that. But it's all about sexual frustration. And this guy, General Ripper, his whole trip on the bodily fluids thing, he's like, I don't deny women, but I do deny them my seed, or however he puts it. He's like basically he's representing like a certain kind of repression and sexual frustration, and then how all of these that like basically war is the culmination of all these different men's like own like kind of suppressions and issues that surround that. So it's like America and Russia are kind of like two like people that are kind of dancing around getting it on, and then the bombs at the end are literally now they're fucking. So like in a way, it's like kind of similar to the end of A Clockwork Orange, where you have the Scarlet Woman and the Beast, you know, where he as communicated in Crowley's Lust card. So it's like it's a thematic thing, but that's the subtext of Doctor Strangelove, is this massive psychoanalytic sexual allegory, according to Kubrick. So that's not me like projecting.
Yeah, let's comment on that. Why is it so important after George Orwell and Aldous Huxley, who talk about sexual frustration equally? Let's be honest, right? One is talking about sex is against the law in 1984, and the other is talking about in this Brave New World. Why is it so important that he's talking about hypersexuality in Doctor Strange and in Clockwork Orange and in the Eyes Wide Shut? And what's the deal? Why is our society
well with the Clockwork Orange, he responded to a critic right away. Like when the movie first came out, some big critic was kind of insulting Kubrick for the type of movie that he made or how he perceived it, and Kubrick kind of had to like communicate some important like major like what am I doing, like, so he basically said that this movie is a warning about the new psychedelic fascism and like the eye-popping like distraction, like, you know, like I can't do it justice. Like if you actually find those Kubrick quotes if you look up like Kubrick psychedelic fascism, you'll find the actual quote. He'll do a better job of communicating to me. And also same thing is true for that response to a fan letter about Doctor Strangelove. Like it's pretty good.
Wasn't he straight edge? Wasn't Kubrick mostly straight edge?
That's what he says.
I think
like in terms of like didn't drink alcohol, didn't smoke cigarettes or cigars or anything.
He smoked for years and then stopped and would very rarely smoke like a cigarette on like special occasions following that.
The new psychedelic fascism, the eye-popping multimedia, quadrasonic drug-oriented conditioning of human beings by other beings, which many believe will usher in the forfeiture of human citizenship and beginning of new zombiedom. Okay.
Of zombiedom, yeah.
Of zombiedom. That's pretty yeah, that's all right.
I get ChatGPT to explain that to us.
So the fascism thing is interesting because of Wilhelm Reich, because he talks about the mass psychology of fascism and the sexuality of fascism. And repression being a major control mechanism. And it's huge. You look at like the puritanical New English Christians who are, they did witch burning, and it's kind of in the Middle East, the same thing. Like sexual repression means that you can control when someone's allotted to release that sexual frustration. So all of a sudden it can be tied to God or the state or the agenda or whatever, right?
And also there's so much context. It's like Kubrick had read so much about potential nuclear war stuff, all these different books in preparation for Doctor Strangelove, and when he set out to do Doctor Strangelove, the story goes that he was ready to do a very serious movie, and then Peter Sellers was just so fucking funny and they were having such a good time, he just said, screw it, we're making a comedy.
Oh yeah.
And so that's interesting.
So that's also, I think, funny because when people are like, well, I didn't get it or something, I think that's even more to the point of it wasn't supposed to be funny at first, but then he realized it just was to him, like it's just
right,
yeah. Like the fact that the world would end because of human error is a comedy of errors. So it's hard not to appreciate that. And also it's so much safer than making a serious movie about the end of the world in the Cold War. Because there's all these other movies also that are just overly dramatic or people can't handle or take them seriously. Here's something that plays on the sensibilities of the time in a perfect way, I think.
Yeah.
And I've got two other selling points for Doctor Strangelove that might not be as deep as David's expert analysis, but like one of them is, as far as I'm aware, it was the earliest reference to fluoride conspiracy that I came across, especially chronologically. And I don't know if Kubrick's a trailblazer in that regard or if he just had his
he named the guy Mandrake, like Hitler's Mandrake root. That's kind of
he was so well studied, like that. Like Kubrick's somebody that would have to know that fluoride was used at Auschwitz. Like Kubrick is somebody that's delved into those areas so deeply that like it's not a question. Like he knew, like even Kubrick when it comes to like the nuclear stuff, it's like he knew that why they wrote what was it put the blame on Mame, what was written on the atomic bomb, I'm drawing a blank right now, but there's the song "Put the Blame on Maine" by God, what is that movie? Gilda. So Gilda was written on the bomb because of Rita Hayworth and Gilda singing the song "Put the Blame on Maine," which is like you'll know it even if you haven't seen this. If you've seen Who Framed Roger Rabbit, they're doing a play on this scene, and the song in Who Framed Roger Rabbit is actually a response to "Put the Blame on Maine." So like the reason why Gilda was written on the atomic bomb was because is where we get the term bombshell first off, like that's where that went, but also that it was like a statement on that we're blaming women for men being this way, like that we're gonna explode shit because we're that men
I think it's a valid point. That's totally not our fault.
Yeah. So Madonna actually referenced this with her, I think it was her last album or the one before that, where it's called Madam X.
And the missile tits.
Right, because the dress that Rita Hayworth wore in the scene where she did put the blame on Maine was modeled after this famous painting called Madam X, and so Madam X also carries all kinds of symbolism too. But
it looks like Heidi. You know what I mean?
It kind of does look like Heidi. and I wanted to say the other reason that I really liked Dr. Strangelove, and I think it's worth watching, is that the conspiracy theory that this movie is what got Kubrick his blank check from the government or whoever put him up to doing the moon landing, because when he has this early CG scene of inside the actual plane where they go and drop the bomb off, apparently that was so accurate to what it really looked like and convincing that the military contacts Kubrick and they're like, how did you get access? This is top secret. How did you know it was in here? And he explained to them that he kind of pieced it together based on just a few little shots of the inside of that aircraft that were released public, and that his ability to not just identify all the different components and know how to put it together, but then to make an accurate recreation of that. Now, if we watch it today in 2024, you're probably like, oh, that doesn't convince me at all. But it would be the same as like the
same thing is true with the Apollo footage, right?
Right. Well, I don't know. I mean, that's still heavily debated, but this one is not debated. Right? That the military did.
Yeah, but that's not why I gave it. That's not what I heard. They gave him the job for. What I heard was they saw the pictures of the war room, and they're like, "Oh my god, he knows exactly how the war room looks. How does he know?" And he's like, "I mean, isn't it obvious? Like psychoanalysis. That's what you would do. You know, that's what all of you would do. Because if you didn't have a round table, you would kill each other. Isn't it obvious?"
He insisted on the table being green, even though it's a black and white movie.
I love that. Yeah. Why?
Because the Earth.
Because he wanted it to have the vibe of gambling, that they're gambling. But I think that's even just for like the actors. It's not even just for obviously not for what we're looking at visually. So it's like their experience, like they're at a gambling table, like you know.
But I think also gambling tables is green because it's like it's supposed to represent the soil, right? Because you've got all these role-playing kings, right, that have been constantly using, like, RPGs come from the kings playing with their little figurines and everything. So they're constantly just playing this theoretical war, and they have no idea that what's coming that's outside, because they're, oh well, the world is blown up, but luckily we're not part of the world, right? So that's like, it sucks that we destroyed our toy, but it's not like we destroyed our home or something, right? Because it's not like we're part of the world, and I feel like that's part of the metaphor too.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Well, watching things from your high castle, you know, and you're placing bets on things, but you're kind of above it, or you're removed from it on some level.
I don't know. I like Doctor Strange. That's a pretty good movie.
It's honestly one of my favorite Kubrick movies. Like, I love the vibe. I love all of it. It's got such an absurdist, sarcastic, over the top approach. Just the way that when the military guy is explaining the fluoride, like the guy he's explaining it to is like, this guy is absolutely insane. Like, he doesn't know what to make of it.
Yeah, which is also Peter Sellers. And that's kind of like what you were saying about the different faces with Kubrick on these different people. It's like Peter Sellers in that movie is like all these different characters, you know. He's playing the president, he's playing the Dr. Strangelove, and he's playing the guy who's like underneath Ripper, who's like, he's explaining the fluoride thing.
Yeah, when they do that is in modern movies, are we supposed to give them more credit because it's so deep? You know, it's kind of like Wise Kids, if you know, wear women's clothes because they're trying to be like Shakespearean actors.
Right, like Eddie Murphy and the Nutty.
Yeah, is Eddie Murphy like a Renaissance man? Is he just brilliant? Is he like, clearly he's into esoteric magic? Is that just part of the deal? Like Medea.
I mean, Nutty Professor is clearly ripping off Kubrick. I mean, come on.
But in a cult way, right? Like, that's the thing. I feel like the Nutty Professor. What's the other one? Medea, right? Medea is not his, but it's
Tyler
it's
Perry is basically the Black Kubrick. I'll
is
say it.
Tyler Perry into the occult? Probably, maybe not. I can't be sure.
I do have an occult question on Kubrick, because there's one thing that's bugged me since forever, and that's that if you read the actual Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess, at the end it completely changes the like, and to me that's almost like losing the whole message that the whole book was supposed to be about. The whole intent was that it doesn't
he
stick.
delivered a
He
different
reverts
point
back.
to it.
But what point was he trying to make? Was he trying to imply that it doesn't revert back, or was it like a Sopranos ending where like you wonder if it reverts back?
Well, I mean, he did it. He just didn't go and continue, like, because Alex then gets back at everybody that had gotten back at him.
Right,
So
and,
it's
and he
just
go
like
and
the
at the very
karma
last
cycle.
scene, spoiler alert for anyone that's going to read the Anthony Burgess novel, but he goes to like a cafe or something, and he sees, I'm going to get some of this wrong, but I swear he sees like a family or some innocent people, and it very much implies like he's going to be hurting these innocent people at the end, and it unequivocally shows that even though everyone thought he was reverted and they did this MK Ultra mind control, it didn't stick, and he went back to his like natural state of being.
Right, but isn't "I was cured" all right implying the rest of it? Like, I both agree and disagree in a way, because for him to say that one line, it's like nudge nudge, not as good as a wink. I'm not I'm cured now, you know.
Maybe
So,
you know what, it probably just went over my head the first time that I saw that ending and compared it to the novel ending, because the novel ending, it spells it out very clearly. Like there,
oh yeah.
it doesn't
Did you have a
allude to
copy
it.
of it that had the NADSAT in the back, like
I
the
did, yeah.
dictionary? Yeah, I love that. That's so cool.
Yeah, what about the Moloko Velocet, right? Is that just about Moloch, right? Like they're eating candy bars made of kids or something from a Roald Dahl book? Moloch Velocet?
I mean, I think, that Moloko is what they called milk, but is that a play on Moloch? I don't know. It could be. But I think a lot of these names are actual chemicals. Like, he actually took them from, not the Moloko part, but the Velocet and the Drencrum and all of that.
Drencrum, yeah.
Drencrum, however you say it. Yeah.
And it was, and based on the guides, right? All the references to this, the Velocet is supposed to be like a meth mixture.
There's also a Slavic Christianity called Molokhin, which is a weird kind of a spiritual sect of the East Slavs, and they love dairy.
Oh my god!
Right. There's also a lot of indications that they've never grown up. That these are like children that are like they're stunted. They're like stunted children in A Clockwork Orange, which is a reoccurring theme. Like, even if you look at the way that, in what's so crazy about in The Shining, when you're looking at that stack of papers that read "all work and no play make Jack a dull boy," he made a woman working for him type all of that out. Like, even the papers that you don't see still continue with "all work and no play make Jack a dull boy." But he didn't just do that. He had her type it in like 5 different sayings in 5 different languages. I believe it was 5. Like, one was like in Italian or something. It's like, tomorrow holds the sun in its mouth or something. There's just all these different things. But what's crazy too is, what tie it back, what I was just saying, is that if you look at what's written in the papers in The Shining, it repeatedly has, all work and no play make Jack a dolt boy, adult instead of dull. And like L and T are pretty far removed on the typewriter. So for that to be a reoccurring mistake as it keeps repeating throughout those pages, it seems like they're actually saying kind of like that. Like, and I wonder if there's like some connection with like Danny and Jack, like they're almost like, the same person, and that's part of like The Shining there. It's like, yeah, see the adult thing, yeah, and a adult boy. Like, is it like like these are grown, like he's a grown man, but he's still a child, and he's like stunted. And so like I see the same thing in A Clockwork Orange. Like, those guys are basically like they're like, even they make statements about it throughout A Clockwork Orange. Like, he's like, we're not little children, are we? They'll say that. So
yeah, that's pretty shining of a moment right there. I don't know. Well, I could ask questions about Charlie Kaufman, but what about things you've been thinking about this week? What have you guys been up to? What did
We're looking at it. No, I've been doing my my adult series is wrapping up. It's got like 3 or 4 days left, and this has been a crazy learning experience just because the
You found out sex
audience
sells. It's weird.
well the audience that comes with this particular content is so much different than any other audience that I've got so far from my comics. It's also the most like I didn't necessarily get a lot of people that are in my existing audience onto this one. It's like pretty much like 80 to 90% all brand new people that have never heard of Paranoid American before. They just saw boobs and they ran to this. So
Yeah.
I'm going to be excited to see how much of their attention I can capture outside of this series.
You realize that there's a huge demographic of people, a surprisingly large demographic of people that actually masturbate to art. You know,
Yeah, well, dude, I went on a crazy deep dive on I think I might have brought it up before in here, but when I saw Roger Rabbit and the Jessica Rabbit aspect, especially the deleted scene that they put onto the laser disc, pretty much just to sell the laser disc because when she tumbles out of the taxi car. Do you know about this?
that's not
Her,
a
like,
deleted scene. Like you can find that. I think did they remove it later?
So what happened is that my understanding is they intentionally added it just so that they could remove it and add it to be the deleted scene.
Okay.
As a way to sell more copies of this. And it's just like a frame where she tumbles out of a car and her legs come apart and all this.
People told me about it. It took me forever on VHS at the time to get that frame to see it. You know, like I was like, come on, is it real?
He was nearly 8 years old by the time he
Like,
finally got there. You know?
Yeah, because it's hard to pause a VHS to get it on an exact frame, you know. But I was like, damn, there it is. That's real.
But my favorite is Rescue Rangers, the Rescue Rangers window.
Rescue Rangers.
I saw that on my own because I had a really good VCR and you could do like frame for frame. And I just remember being like, what is in that window? Because it's clearly like a photograph, not like an animation.
Oh, no, you're talking about the Rescuers. I thought you were talking about Gadget from Rescue Rangers.
No,
which is
I'm sorry.
Another voluptuous cartoon. So anyways, without going too much of a tangent, that's what got me interested in like, how far back does that go and what mechanism of the human mind does it apply to men and women equally? And I don't think it does, but it's called like super sexuality or super imagery. And one of the actual scientific explanations for it is these types of birds that they will always be attracted to like the brightest blue eggs with like the most spots on it. And scientists found that if they took a most obvious plastic egg that didn't look or smell or feel anything like an actual egg, but if it was bluer and had more spots, they could lure birds away from sitting on their own eggs and let the eggs die in favor of these like brighter blue eggs. Dude. And it's kind of indicating this like hot wiring on our brain that even a cartoon character, as long as it follows the right proportions and gestalt, like it can trick your brain into saying that's more favorable than the real thing that's right here.
Right. I think what you just said is very relatable to what Kubrick had said in response to that critic about A Clockwork Orange when he's describing like the eye-popping media. Like there's something that implies like that you're distracted by this and you're not gonna challenge or do anything about the way that you're being oppressed because you're just like, you know, like that was the idea with, if you look at like the rationale from like the early MK Ultra, like what their vision was for how that would work for the public is they gave it to the soldiers and they were just like busy climbing trees and shit. And they were just like, if you put the public on this, they're just going to be so immersed in this that we can just go about and do whatever we want and they won't be able to like organize or like object even. They're just going to be like completely on this trip. And then, you know, the Pentagon got surrounded by people on that very drug and to levitate it, and they put flowers in the barrels of the guns, and then they were like, oh shit, this isn't working the way we planned. So that backfired. But that was the idea, and I think that's what's being communicated in A Clockwork Orange is like that this is actually a strategic thing. Like the way that the society is working is kind of like we're trying to put them into this, and it's a cycle where it's like the you know, people going into the prison, being released from the prison, like just, you know, we're looking at the super stimulus.
You know what? When I see this image of Venus, if you ignore the head, it looks just like one of the ants from the movie Ants, Disney, with like the two eyes in the mouth.
Yeah, kind of the head of Greedo or something from
Yeah.
Star Wars. Yeah.
This is the thing I was talking about though, and it also relates to junk food is another good example of like why would you eat, something that's clearly fake over something that's not, and it's the same concept of this supernormal stimulus, that the artificial thing, if it can make you feel like it's better than the non-artificial thing, like you'll somehow trick yourself into doing it every time.
Was that Woody Allen or was that A Bug's Life? I forget.
That was Bugs Life I'm talking about. Woody Allen, I think, was in Ants with the Z, which was the counterpart to Bugs Life.
I get those mixed up. It's been a while.
I can't believe they raced to make Ants movies. CGI Ants movies. What a race. We lived through a weird time. The Venus is interesting, though. This idea of supernormal stimulus. I mean, on one hand, you have people that maybe don't have... In new art, people don't have access to sex as much, maybe in their first youth. They're seeing pornography more, and maybe they're becoming more interested in abstract ideas, like before they even know what is real. But this is different. What you're talking about is in effigy for the purpose of, reminding people, sustaining of, an idea.
Well, look at that first sentence in the second paragraph too. For example, it's possible to create artificial bird eggs, which birds will prefer over their own eggs.
Yeah, but like this is for lizards and birds, like reptiles, not necessarily for mammals. I don't know. Mammals are a little different. Like the reason we have the uncanny valley is because birds can mimic the sounds of humans and make faces with their wings that look kind of like friendly. So we've learned to differentiate and be uncomfortable.
Right. But I almost feel like we might learn and have the capacity to differentiate, but you can still succumb to the same thing that the lizard succumbs to, which is the reason why you've got Coomers that buy hentai body pillows and that's all they need.
But I think they do that because like they don't know what's better. Yeah, and breast implants probably the same.
Well, the thing with breast implants is like it tends to be a novelty thing where if somebody actually gets in a partnership with somebody with breast implants, they might be really into it. They're like, oh, this is fucking awesome. And then at a certain point, it starts to they relate to it as fake. They feel like it's fake.
It'd have to be so huge. Like if they were like so big that it was comical, I'd probably sustain enthusiasm and amusement.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It depends on the person and even the time in their life. Like you can, you know what I mean? Like it's a thing. I've heard that's the process. I've heard that from women who have gotten breast implants. I had a friend who was talked into it when she was 17 because her mom was a plastic surgeon and like was just like gave the go ahead or whatever for it. And she had done ayahuasca and she felt like it was like trying to push the breast implants out of her body and it was like this kind of horrific experience. And then she's like wanted to get them out and then she like changed her mind because it was like her mom was just like, no, this will really help you in life. You'll get like and so but it was this. It's this thing where people, you're with somebody and they're like, oh, this is so much fun. And then it's like almost like they get tired of the toy. Whereas like, I think the natural doesn't really have that same tendency in the same way necessarily.
It's wild. You were saying that ayahuasca was making her feel like her body was trying to push it out because I think of like the princess and the pea analogy, or like if I'm walking around and I just get like the tiniest little like pebble stuck somewhere in my shoe, it's all I can think about. And I couldn't imagine having like artificial appendages because I guess at a certain point it's like when you cure certain levels of tinnitus or if I had a friend that had a gunshot that went off like really close to his ear and he just heard ringing in his ears, and the way that you overcome that is they'll find like the exact frequency and you just wear headphones for months, and at a certain point your brain just starts ignoring that one particular frequency, and that's how you can get over one of the many ways of therapy. But I assume that's kind of like if you get these weird body modifications, it's almost like at a certain point you get used to ignoring it, but it's absolutely going to be a foreign object. And if you start tripping and you're in a completely different state of being, you no longer have that like trained ignoring response.
Yeah, well, ayahuasca is a purgative on multiple levels, so it can literally physically make you vomit. And it can also, and as it's happening, I don't know if you've experienced this, but it can really feel like you're taking all of your like psychic, like toxic parasitic shit, and you're just like,
I've just done the cool chemical DMT version, so
yeah, a little different, but it still carries the same some of the same in
Minecraft, not in the real world.
Dude,
Yeah,
Lego
it's just-
Fortnite. It's 2024. I just was watching Mannequin. I don't know if I did
Oh,
that
God, it's
recently, but I
awesome.
like to keep it
Awesome movie.
topical. Yeah,
First
but
one's so much better than the second one.
I don't know, bro. You know what? We
the
don't have
second
time to
one-
argue this. No, just kidding. Go ahead.
The second one has as the better sidekick, like the black dude that goes like off the rails.
Same sidekick. So
Or
that's not a case for my favorite movie yet.
His role in the second movie takes a much weirder turn.
Expanded.
So
Yeah.
I like him, but the first movie is so much like the second movie doesn't.
He does some cool stuff in the first movie though, like when he goes in and he's gonna like fight, and he's like, "I'm gonna have to just, I know what to do," and he takes off his crazy outfit, like trench coat, and he's wearing a suit, and he's like ready to be serious, so he can like, it's so good, it's amazing. Sorry, but that's
the
a case
first
for your
one is
movie.
the guy that has the mole with the hair, right? That's the first one.
He's in the second one, Mannequin 2. Yeah. The mole is in the second movie, Mannequin on the Move.
Oh man, see now I have to rewatch Mannequin 1 and 2.
Yeah, so Mannequin 1 is the one where you find out in ancient Egypt there was a princess who's going to have to marry a dung lord, and she prays to just like be turned into a mummy basically, or like to be turned into a statue as long as possible. And she is, and then she becomes like multiple like spirits and stuff. But this all relates, we'll have to get into it in a second, to another story from the Metamorphosis, from Ovid's Metamorphosis, about a guy named Pygmalion. And there's a movie, like, so if you think about it, there's a Mannequin Zero, because there's a 1955 movie that takes place in the same, I believe, Philadelphia mall that they shot all of both movies in. And it's about Pygmalion. It's about the guy who's making statues. Making the mannequins for the movie. And Pygmalion in Ovid's Metamorphosis falls in love with his own statue, which becomes animate because of the gods, right? But also because he puts so much love and attention, and he perfects this thing, like it's so much, right? But yeah, so then she ends up meeting the dude, and they run off together, in the first movie after doing like amazing sets. Like they have to make the mall like look really good. The second movie is the one where you're talking about the mole prince. In 1,000 years, she's been asleep because she was wearing a necklace that the gypsies gave her. I like that one better. But
Maybe
they're both great.
Maybe I'm thinking of the second one that I like better than the first one.
But they're so good. So it's like, do you have to pick a favorite, Like,
yeah.
But the point is Pygmalion. Sorry, go ahead.
I vaguely I feel like I know what you're talking about, but maybe I don't. Can you show me the poster for the movie or something? I don't know if I've seen this.
I do have the poster somewhere at home, but a Mannequin poster movie. Here it is, motorcycle, and we can build a dream together.
Oh yeah. I remember this thing.
That's all you need.
Man,
You actually
you're taking me back, dog.
Wow,
you actually just see the
Photoshop.
That's weird that they did that.
Look at his head. His head is so not the same, like coloring or perspective or even scale almost.
Yeah, but it's so 80s. They did the right thing here. They took it, they put it on a white background.
This was
no one thought they were going to see this in high resolution in the 80s.
What a trend this was. This is so weird science, right?
Yeah, but then Mannequin 2, Mannequin on the Move, which is even better. This is the one I have a poster for. Hold on. Boom. Look at this. Right?
Yeah,
I'm back.
So you're telling me that that Mannequin had a good sequel?
Oh, by far. This is one of those periods in history. Like, I love the 90s because from 1991 and maybe even just like 89, 91 on, all the sequels were inarguably better than the original movie, because they did the same thing that movies did to books in the 80s, right? They're like, I don't care about the book. The audience cares about the book. I'm going to write my movie, And so I don't care about the original. The audience cares about the original. I'm going to make my sequel. They're always...
That's the Disney formula too.
Yeah, it's great. Like, I love these movies. They spin on, like, if you're fragile and you really want to like stick close to home, watch the old movie again, right? But if you want to see someone like take all your favorite characters, drive them off a cliff, and then meet new people that are not in a new town that has nothing to do with the original movie, 90s sequels, right?
You noticed that with Siskel and Ebert, it was like almost every time that they had read a book and say that they've read a book before the movie that was the movie, they never liked the movie. Like very rarely liked the movie or a play. If they had seen the play, they're like, "Oh, this is nothing compared to the play," you know.
It's
and then
like,
they're just like
okay.
give it a thumbs down. It's like, dude, if this was out of the equation and you were just treating these movies without this other side to it, it's like you can't judge. Like you should be judging the thing on the thing. I get it. I mean, they're gonna do that, but yeah, whatever.
No, it's like I think it's the truth with like Short Circuit 2. Like Short Circuit 2 is amazing. Like all kinds of he becomes a citizen. It's so ahead of its time. It's nothing like the first movie. They get rid of the original characters. They're like off in Denver living in the mountains, right?
Right.
And it's just all about the fake Indian guy. Like it's perfect. It's the perfect movie, you know, because it has absolutely nothing to do with the original and they can do whatever they want. That's cool. They have enough money to make. I actually love that style. Like Ninja Turtles 3, where they go to Japan.
Yeah, they go back in the
What
past.
is
right?
happening, right?
Time.
I love that movie, right?
They're just like, screw it. We can do whatever we want.
I like that. I like that kind of freedom. I really do.
Yeah, that is real creative freedom that those people had to do Ninja Turtles 3. There was like nobody was stepping in and telling them, no, well, you know.
Seriously, that's like it's hard.
Jim Henson was dead at that point, maybe. No,
Yeah,
was he?
yeah, he
You know what else
Okay,
too is that so
Yeah.
many people had slept on the original Ninja Turtles because they're like, what's the premise of this again? It's their turtles and their okay, next. You know, so many people passed on that at a certain point they were just like, I guess, yeah, that makes sense. They're gonna go in time back to feudal Japan. Like, but everything else that didn't sound right ended up exploding. So let's give this to you. And I feel like, dude, even if you look at the history of Disney movies, the ones that if they've got 3 or 4 movies that are all being developed at the same time, Disney almost like 9.5 times out of 10 puts all their backing on the movie that ends up flopping, and the one that they decided to go right to video ends up being the big one that they rush into being like a theatrical release. So even like the absolute like giants of this industry don't necessarily know what the hell they're doing when it comes to this.
You can say that again. Happens over
I don't
and
know,
over
but
again.
that's exactly why like Power Rangers got better in the early 2000s. Also, like when I remember in, you know, at some point I was like 20 something and I was like, I want to make movies, but maybe I should try to aim down to get myself in there. Maybe I'll make like some kids media. Maybe I'll do like Barbie movies, because that didn't sound really cool. That didn't sound at that time. I swear to God, I feel bad about it now. That did not sound cool to me. And then I was like, okay, I should watch some Barbie movies to see how bad they are and how I could improve them. Now I'm like, I'm willing to say this. I was blown away. Like some of these Barbie movies were utterly impressive. The CGI teams that they were using, the animations, the voice acting that they had, the stories fundamentally were far more interesting than I ever
CGI?
expected.
Was there a 3D Barbie movie? I thought they were all 2D
Tons.
animations.
No, they have tons and tons. It was like 10 on. They started making tons and tons of these CGI.
Saying there was 2,000 of them. I was like, oh shit.
There probably there are hundreds though.
What about the Barbie movie that was the Karen Carpenter story? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
There's the Karen Carpenter story that's all Barbie dolls.
That's out of control. Superstar, the Karen Carpenter story. I need to watch this. What?
Yeah.
1987 experimental biographical film about Karen Carpenter made using Barbie dolls.
Yeah.
Oh my God, bro. Okay.
Yeah. If I watch this, I get really hungry, and like it's good. It's a good like your appetite will increase because of, you know, Karen.
I like that your top suggested video on there was Alf.
Yeah, Alf Live. I've got Alf suggestions out the whiz out. I've got Alf Latino, Alf Japanese. I can't even show you. That's probably why. YouTube is smart. I love what YouTube is doing. They're like, dude, don't do this.
Is there a shift now? Are we not able to just show YouTube stuff now?
I feel like it was after the solar flare, aka
And
like
show YouTube on YouTube. What a freaking innovation that is. You can't use our service on our service.
Right.
Look at how bad we are. We've come so far as a people.
Well, that's the thing too, is I've made videos just from videos that I've downloaded from YouTube, like video collages or something, and it's like, and they'll be like, oh, you can't do this for copyright, and then I'm like, who shared this and why were they able to? They got permission? Did they get permission or what?
Don't start me on this tangent. This is like my version of like a medical problem where you just talk for like 4 hours.
Did I win my one with I have one right now I'm doing with Will, because Will and I did a conversation about Planet of the Apes, and then he showed a clip, like he turned the camera and showed his screen like blur by of what was it? What's that show? You know, Stranger Things, basically. So it was a little tiny glimpse of Stranger Things, and then they wanted to like take the whole video, copyright. And I was like, what is wrong with you? And like on principle, when that happens to me, it's like you have to fight a traffic ticket, right? Like you have to do a fair use case and wait a month for them to admit that they were wrong. Or like they'll never do that. So they'll just wait it out because they're like, well, we can't ever admit that this is wrong. So just they wait a month so that the YouTube automatically forfeits their side of the argument. But they just didn't contest. They didn't surrender. So I don't know. Copyright is evil. We gotta get rid of it.
So floodgates could open. What would happen if we just dropped all of that culturally? Good stuff,
like China. I feel like what happened to China in the early 2000s? Basically nothing bad. I feel like I don't know. Pygmalion's interesting to me because Pygmalion isn't just about the love of art; it's about the love of creating art, right? The bringing to life through art. And I feel like that's a big thing here too, as well. People that make the statues of the gods, like the idol builders and everything like that. That's a different relationship, even. And I don't know. I'm further from the relationship of the audience than I've ever been. Like, so it's hard. I love watching movies with other people. You know, I love watching people watch movies more now. I get why people want to pack people into theaters. It's so you can see people and how they would react if they believed the thing, right? Because when you see a movie and, you know, if I'm watching a movie now and I see blood, I'm like, wow, look at all the corn syrup and like the fountains that they used for it. I'm never going to have the same experience as a kid who's like, that's blood, right? Or,
right.
Which I don't miss it. I'm just saying though, like that's
just YouTube reaction videos. Like these are people that just want to see how other people react to a thing that you've already seen.
I guess, yeah, kind of. Or they want to change you through your reaction.
Well, a lot of them too are like music reaction, where it's like you watch other people listen to your favorite song for the first time to like relive your discovery of the thing through them. It's like it's a weird sort of like proxy thing. Like it's kind of like going to the movies. Like you see the movie, you live through the character, but then after you've lived through the character, now you want to watch another person live through the character because now you're living, you know, yourself living through the character through them living through the character. It's kind of crazy.
Dude, there was that guy. There was like, I think the best reaction video I've seen. I can't find it now where it's like the full thing with all the pauses, because what they like to do now is they shorten the videos where you're just like every time that they pause, they remove that, so it's like shorter or whatever. It drives me nuts. But you've done that sometimes, I think, Andreas, where you is there like a program or something you run something through? Like it
can be done. It's hard to do now. They made it harder.
Did they? Okay. Yeah. Well, this guy was like, it's bullshit, but he says he grew up in a cult, and he describes the cult, and he's got all these details with it, but he's never seen Star Wars because he's never been able to see any movies. So he's like, but like he's going along watching Star Wars with you for the first time, and he's like relating to all this stuff from his childhood, from the cult, and like he's like, oh, sister, whatever, she used to have her hair very similar to that, and he starts telling you all these details about this woman in the cult that was like had her hair like that, and why, you know, as I can't do it justice, but yeah, some guy just like, you know, this is that idea. You're like, oh wow, this is a reaction video from a grown man. He's in his like 40s, and he's never seen Star Wars: A New Hope. You know, it's really fun. But I don't usually like those reaction videos very much. They kind of annoy me. I'm surprised there's so many and people are as into it. But
I end up watching things I haven't done or seen yet. Like I'll see like Asmongold do, you know, some video game I haven't played. But I don't tend to watch like other people react to things I've done before. But I should now, after listening to Parent American explain it, because it would fulfill a purpose of trying to figure. I think though it's also time, it's just like, why do people like something I don't like? You watch, you're like, oh, this is why, you know?
Right. Well, to be fair, like I could see it more with a video game thing, because you're contemplating, do I want to get into this? And if you see a demonstration of what is this like, what's people's experience, whatever, that makes a little bit more sense.
Like, did I explain to you like that I finally like forced myself to try to like Avatar? like how that happened. So like I was
Oh.
like, okay, like I'm looking into video games and I'm looking into special effects. And if you're using Unreal Engine, a big procedural tool they use is Houdini. And Houdini is what they use to make all the big movies like Planet of the Apes. And I was like, oh, cool, Planet of the Apes. I'm gonna go see that in theater. That sounds like something I like. But then they're saying also the way they did that was they had all this money, like $1 billion spent through Houdini for Avatar and making all these water effects and everything else like that. And so I watched like videos about how they made Avatar. And on one hand, it's like James Cameron's a freaking madman who's like insane, and he's just like masturbating money. Like he's just like spending money in the weirdest, most wasteful way. He's like, let's just take Susan Sarandon and make her into a teenager with like CGI. La 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 la. Like he doesn't. He's like worse than. It's like if you took George Lucas and you like to the exponent of Peter Jackson wasted money and resources to make a movie, but that's making then the team make all these cool tools. And so watching there's like 2,600 shots that are all done completely by Houdini, right? And so it's cool to watch the movie for me now, just for that, like just to see like, oh, okay, this is how they did this thing where they had procedural water, right? How could you make it look like there's no real water in the whole movie? Like,
so
basically.
I have a question. So that was the highest grossing film of all time when it came out, the first Avatar, and he beat his own record, James Cameron, with Titanic, which beat Spielberg's Jurassic Park, which beat Spielberg's E.T., like highest grossing films. But the money that went into Avatar, I don't know, was it the highest grossing movie with that in account? Or is there another movie that's the highest grossing movie where we do the math for that?
Yeah, like there's like movies that don't take a lot of money to make. Like I feel like you look at examples like Napoleon Dynamite, right?
Sure.
They made like crazy amounts of money, and they spent just about as much money. Actually, they spent like twice as much money on advertising than they did on the making of the movie, or more, right? Like it was a far larger advertising budget on MTV and all these things. So yeah, if you don't spend very much money,
know what the highest grossing movies are with the cost of the movie taken into account. Because all I know is what the highest grossing movies are where we ignore that. What's that?
You just saying like what the most profitable movies were?
Yeah, like what are the movies that made the most money taking into account how much it costs? Like what was you know what I'm saying? Like probably, or are you gonna say Clerks or Slacker or something? Like I don't know. Like yeah.
How much did Avatar cost to make?
Well, it says as of March 2024, the original Avatar 2009 is the most commercially successful movie of all time, grossing about $2.9 billion.
Really?
Yeah.
That's how much it made? Jeez.
Yeah, that's the thing. So, because the reason it made money, I was like grimacing
Overseas.
earlier. It was because of the fact that movies were leaving theater, more movies were being made just for streaming, and this was this last big movie, 2010 or something. What was Avatar? 2009? It's like one of the last big movies on that scale, and they had perfect marketing all over the world so that it could be released properly through. Like, if you have a theater, you demand that they rent Avatar along with all the other movies you want. So it kept going and going and going.
And
so
it says the budget of the Avatar movie was about 400 million, and the advertising budget was 150 million. So it clearly made plenty of profit.
Okay,
yeah,
there you go. Yeah,
they say like Avatar 2 costs like $1 billion basically in terms of like all the software and technology and hardware that they build, because they have like GoPros mounted in front of your face that are recording your face with infrared cameras to get the muscle movement. And then they have software that maps it onto the muscles. And then they have models that will move the right muscles according to which muscles you move. So you have perfect movement instantaneously. It's kind of insane, right? But
do
like
I want to watch Dances with Wolves with Avatar at the same time and just see if there's something to it? I haven't seen Avatar 2 yet. Should I watch that? Is that
probably
something
now that I if you do, like, the only reason that I would probably is because of those scenes. But like the first half hour was unbearable. The next hour was like long-winded, and I haven't quite got through the last half hour.
Why is it unbearable? Tell me.
It's just like I don't need humans in movies, and I think this is true also with Planet of the Apes. Like the new Planet of the Apes, I've heard from Neurotic, like it's ruined by humans that are interfering with the scenes, right? Because You're supposed to get emotionally invested in these humans. It's way easier to do that with some people if it's a dog or a monkey. I'm just being honest. You're not gonna.
You saw the new Planet of the Apes?
No, I haven't. I haven't seen it yet. I will. I'm gonna see it, but I haven't had time yet.
I've heard such bad things about it, and I'm just like,
I don't think anything can ever compete with Under the Planet of the Apes for me. Like it was like that was
beneath the Planet of the Apes. Yeah,
beneath the Planet of the Apes. Yeah,
I just said that to somebody actually. That the second Planet of the Apes is actually pretty fucking good.
It is really good. Like if you ignore some of the production stuff, because for a large portion of the movie, it's just like two dudes without their shirts running around in the desert and like
nothing wrong with that. That's like Top Gun, right?
It is like Top Gun, but the premise of the movie is so occult and so deep, man. I love that movie.
Yeah. The one where the president thing or something, it got so over the top, like those Planet of the Apes movies, some of them, I don't know, man. I can't. I guess I did when I was young, but maybe if I revisited it,
I feel like, did you read again with the book thing? Like if you read the like Planet of the Simians or the Songes or whatever, like it's all about this couple that comes back and the time warp has happened, like a birthing thing, and their dogs have died out, so they've made monkeys and chimps into slaves that are a little bit smarter, but they're the ones who work all the time, so they've evolved past them. So there is weird, like Franco racist undertones to the novel in the Planet of the Apes, because they're talking about French colonization in Africa, but also looking.
Rod Serling wrote the ending, right? Of the first
to the film, right? Not to the book.
Yeah, the film.
Yeah. But the first film, like they take it to like, I mean, it's to a racial place clearly, but like the third movie, fourth movie, when it's all about, you know, their revolutionary society,
right,
and their riots that they're having, that are similar
the riot
to like
scene is pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, like it's, I don't know, it's pretty good, but I think that the new Planet of the Apes is underrated. You know, the James Franco one is cool.
Oh, well, there's the Marky Mark one too.
That one's dead to me because it lost Roseanne her series. So like Marky Mark's version is dead to me forever.
So I thought Ambien lost her series, according to her.
Well, but if they hadn't cast the what isn't it, Helena
Michael Jackson
Carter that played that character that then Roseanne said looked like Valerie Jarrett or whatever her name was.
Oh,
I still feel that if that movie didn't exist, we would still have an actual Roseanne. So I blame.
She would have said something else. Come on. They were looking for anything they could. They hated her anyway. Hollywood hated Roseanne.
The real question is Helena Bonham Carter actually Michael Jackson? Like that's what we need to prove.
You know who really liked Roseanne was Kubrick. He was a big Roseanne.
Really?
Fan.
What?
Yeah.
What's the context? At what point did Kubrick just come out and be like, I really like Roseanne?
He said it. Yeah, that was one of his stated sitcoms that he really enjoyed.
Yeah, he loves The Simpsons and Seinfeld and Roseanne.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Who would have thought?
The most authentic view of a country you could get. I don't disagree.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't in the U.S., so he at the same time he had a nostalgia for his childhood and whatever she represented politically to him at that time. Because that was the thing, is that she was like a snarky, like extreme liberal, and then everything, we played musical chairs politically, and now all of a sudden what isn't what it was anymore. Like that time when like Roseanne had her show, like everybody who was quote unquote anti-vax was mostly like liberal mothers, and so like she had these these attitudes or whatever. So he liked the liberalism of that time. How Kubrick would respond to the way that we changed goalposts and everything is a whole other matter. You can only speculate on it. It drives me nuts though when people like to project what people who are dead would say now about whatever, because you don't really know. I see people do that with Hunter S. Thompson all the time. Not all the time, but I've seen that happen where people will say, oh well, he would say about this, and you're like, dude, shut the fuck up. He'd be calling them all Nazis probably. I don't even know.
People do that with Jesus all the time, right? He's kind of
people do it with Jesus. Yeah, what would Jesus say?
Yeah, what would Jesus do?
Is Charlie Kaufman trying to Kubrick hard, or is he chilling out now? Because what about Synecdoche, New York, right? Synecdoche, New York.
It's Synecdoche, but I'm probably getting it wrong.
It's like it's got that synchronicity.
It's a real place. So
Doke, isn't it not? Like, isn't it like two words put together? Because this.
You know what? I'm not. I get corrected when I say it by people who have relationships to that movie. So Alan
Yeah,
it's like Alan Green's favorite movie or one
there
of
is
his
a
favorite movies.
there is a place called Schenectady or whatever. Schenectady.
Oh yeah, it's a play on it, and it has implications.
Right, but there's some kind of sync kind of thing going, Sinek Doke thing, and you've seen this movie, right?
Yeah, when it came out like a long time ago. Yeah.
See, I feel like it's like the Kubrick adaptation. He's trying to be more clear about Kubrick in adaptation. He's trying to say, like, this is what it means to spend your life constantly trying to organize the imagery in a way that you can explain it, in your lifetime to somebody, right?
Yeah, I mean the Kubrick quote. One of the Kubrick quotes that comes in my mind more than most of them is that one about if you really want to communicate something, even if it's just an emotion or an idea, the least enjoyable way is directly, as it only goes about half an inch. But if you can get people to a point where they have to think a moment what it is that you're getting at and discover it for themselves, then the thrill of discovery cuts right to the heart. And so that gets kind of funny though, because you could be talking about like dog whistles or something, you know what I mean? Like you're implying something. What is it that you're implying, But I think
discovery is half the battle. Yeah, that's the fun part.
But he was so explicit while ambiguous at the same time, and there's something very paradoxical about that. Like, especially like you look at 2001: A Space Odyssey, there's very direct symbolism that's right in your face, right in front of you, and it'll hold it on that symbolism for so long, and it's like giving you every opportunity at like an LSD pace. Like the movie is in a pace of like that's completely congruent with like the pace of LSD. So like at any point you could actually get in it. He gives you an opening for an insight. It's like he's opened the door for you, and then he's like, you want to walk through it, But at the same time, he's not telling you what it is, because if he does that, nobody discovers anything, and then there's no fucking real joy in it anymore, Everything. So many filmmakers feel like they need to explain everything to their audience, and it's kind of annoying. Some of the best filmmakers right now are the people who aren't doing that at all. Midsommar, like Ari Aster, Robert Eggers, like what Lars von Trier has done. David Lynch. Like these are people that like don't need to explain everything to their audience, and the audience actually appreciates it, which kind of ties back to what you were saying earlier about
sequels.
Yeah, you can't like but people trying to predict what people will take to, where you're like, oh, this straight to video thing actually is the one that people actually wanted, but they're like trying to project what it is. It's like they did like music producers in the 60s and 70s were just like, I don't know what the kids are into. I'm not hip. Someone comes and they're like, we're going to do this thing. And they're like, I don't know. Just I feel like you know what they're into. Here, take this money. Like that doesn't really happen anymore because everyone wants to play it so safe.
Don Kirshner
does happen, just not as much.
Don Kirshner knew everything about every, like he knew. So he knew Don Kirshner, bro. He made the Monkees. He made Archie and the Gang. He made Sugar. Oh, honey. That is a jam. Sorry, I just wanted to say that.
Should I play a Monkees album with Planet of the Apes? Is that where I want to go with it?
We really need to do that. That seems like a reasonable thing to do.
The Monkees movie is incredible. We did always record like visual analysis of the Monkees movie Head. Like I think it's directed by Jack Nicholson.
Like the animated one?
No. You haven't seen the Monkees movie Head? Oh, bro. I'm sorry. Monkees. The Monkees movie Head is an acid trip that you kind of will never want to take acid if you see, basically.
Well, you're not selling it.
It's kind of like, I just want to say, like, I feel like this is the punishment, the punishment of the Monkees. This is the last temptation of the Monkees. This is the crucifixion, the passion of the Monkees. Go ahead, David. Sorry.
Oh, I don't know. No, you just said it. No, I mean, there's references in this movie that are so direct. Like they use a set from Rosemary's Baby and put a white monolith in it. Like it's just so bizarre that this movie was made. Like Jack Nicholson shows up for a second, but this is, if I'm not mistaken, he directed this movie. I did like an audio commentary on this movie with like 4 other people, and I had never seen the movie, and I like reveal it to them like halfway through the movie. Actually, I've never seen this, but I'm all discussing it like as we're going along because there's so much symbolism. It totally worked, So
it's written and produced by Jack Nicholson and directed by Raffleson.
Oh, thank you. Okay, yeah.
Is that Liam Gallagher in the middle there?
I mean, these are the Monkees.
That's the Monkees, dog.
Yeah, bro. Like the Monkees.
Yeah, that's right before they do the porpoise song right there.
Yeah, so basically it starts out, I don't want to spoil it. Now you need to watch it, but I can tell you how it starts because a lot of time people will start this movie and stop watching this movie as soon as it starts because they're so scared. But it starts out with them being chased by their former fans. And this is like before they were hated, right? This movie made their fans hate them the same way the movies made their fans love them because they did the same Tavistock mind control where you show girls running and screaming after a band and then girls run and scream after a band. Like they didn't start that way. They're just paid actors that were picked up on Sunset Strip that showed up on time that were all 4F because they had flat feet and were short, and one guy was British and short, right? So that was how they could be sure they weren't going to be drafted. So they put together this band, and then Don Kirshner writes all their songs for them. And at a certain point, they said they want to start making their own songs, and he doesn't like that. So he says, "I'm all right. I'm going to destroy this band." And out comes Archie and the gang and Lancelot Link, which you've seen Lancelot Link, I hope.
I hadn't even heard of this before.
Lancelot Link. So what happens right after the Monkees show gets canceled, right? So this is, I'm just again trying to avoid spoilers here about the movie, is Archie and the Gang is a band that's about a bunch of cartoon characters. So he doesn't even have to pay them because he owns the cartoons. He like paid someone to draw them. He owns Archie the Gang. Then comes out a detective show called Lancelot Link Secret Chimp. And it's a show starring actual monkeys driving around in Rolls Royces, and there's like a band, a rock band in this thing.
Okay, no, I have seen this. Now I'm remembering this now.
And he's like, "Look, I'm gonna treat these monkeys better than I'll ever treat you guys. Like you guys could have been in the Rolls Royce. You could have had spaghetti dinners, you know." And so this is like direct offense to the monkeys. So it starts out with them being chased off of. Oh, David got popped. Good to see you.
Oh, good.
It started with them being chased off a dock, and then they just like become acid, and then from there it just gets more and more nightmarish. Like it's like literally Jack Nicholson's like therapy sessions and Dianetics recorded. It's pretty scary.
That's a good description. I put in the private chat a link to the always record because this has got like Mark Leclerc, Jason Barrera, Bill Klaus, Alan Abadessa Green, and myself, and I think somebody else was involved maybe. But yeah, no, this is just like us exploring the entirety of Head, and I'm appreciative that YouTube has allowed this to just continue to exist online as a historical artifact.
Oh, thank God. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, there's a lot to this movie, and you just really need to watch it. Like, it's very important. If you haven't seen Head, definitely watch Head. Oh my God. Yeah. It's one of those swimmer moments too. Like everything in 1968, you have to kind of like look at Playboy magazines. Like if you ever anthropologically go for the articles, but you look at the ads particularly, and you can see how ads change based on what kinds of drugs that they're drugging people with. Yeah. And so there's like cocaine, and then there's like acid, and then there's like amphetamines, and then there's like Romulan ads, which is like a DXM, head medicine cough pill that they're giving people to like detox from becoming opiate addicts and everything else like that, and all these, you know, in between these periods. So you can see it also for like the kids media, like these kids shows. The Monkees is kind of aimed towards kids, how brutally psychedelic it becomes in 1968. Like go on YouTube and type in like 1964, 1965 television kids shows commercials, 1967, 1968, go to 1968, and all of a sudden it's just like, this is crazy. On top of it, you have computers. Yeah, you have computers that are introduced. So all of a sudden, you have these weird psychedelic granule patterns of, you know, logos and everything all at once. It all comes with the drug revolution.
Right. All the things, the synchronicity of 68 is significant. Like in Rosemary's Baby, like when you look at what's written on her chest, like he put Anton LaVey directed to have 68 for the year written on what her chest during the impregnation scene. Like construction for the World Trade Center, the first tower of the World Trade Center, started in 1968. It's the year that 2001: A Space Odyssey came out. It's the year that Rosemary's Baby came out. It's the year that 911 became what you dial on a telephone in the United States in case of an emergency. Before that, it was operator, and then you request 911, you know. And their explanation for that was that 9 and 1 were so far removed on rotary dial that it wouldn't be as common to mistakenly dial that. But at the same time, it gets really weird because you're like, I don't know, man. Tisha B'Av is the 9th day of the 11th month in the Hebrew calendar, the day we
right. And isn't it like 1-1? It's like 119 in some European countries, right? So like, I mean, why are we going So like they could have picked other patterns, right?
Totally.
Because we sit on the left side of our car and they sit on the right, so they just kind of like kept the same inverse pattern.
Seems pretty Jewish, bro. Left to right, right to left. Just
I know. I was
saying.
just thinking that. Yeah. I totally went there too. You said it, and I was like, oh. Maybe it's just because I was arranging Hebrew books the other day, but yeah.
Yeah, not left to right, right to left, not right to left, left to right. Ah! Every time. That's gotta be brutal. Wait, so yeah, if it's okay, I'm just wondering, yeah, because like you had to just some of those books are gonna be left to right, and some are gonna be right to left, and you have to decide. That's God, what a weekend. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I get to do it tomorrow. I gotta load shelves with Hebrew books all day, or a good portion of the day. But yeah, it's fun.
Dude,
Yeah.
Don Kirshner is a genius, though. I don't know. That's like, I mean, think about it. Like, you create a pop group, the boy band thing. This guy like invents. I don't know if he invents that, but he's like your vaudeville star, entertainer, like pimp, right? Like he owns this
Right.
little.
Would you say like like Rick Rubin, or is that a different analogy?
No, I think Rick Rubin doesn't own the people the same way. Maybe Rick Rubin might be like this deep mind control genius that I like am underestimating. But Don Kirshner like owned people, you know, like he was like classic vaudeville. Like, I own you. I made you who you are. You can't, like the Partridge Family not being able to play instruments. He made sure people couldn't play instruments after the Monkees learned how to play instruments. He wanted people that were prone to not being able to play instruments, right? And that's what we have today. We have an entire industry of musicians that can't play instruments.
Dude, is he a musician groomer? Is that the operative?
Totally. Yeah.
Oh, trippy. Yeah, because am I wrong on this? But
well, he's an entertainment groomer because he's not training them to become musicians. He's making them pop stars, right? He transitioned us from musician to pop star.
Totally important distinction. But wasn't the thing with the Monkees that they came about by literally like a it was like a contest almost. They were just looking for like people that like vibed with the Beatles.
Yeah, basically.
In America,
well,
so they wanted American Beatles. Isn't that?
I mean,
the idea?
again with like the Americanization of this idea to make it sound more meritocracy based. So it wasn't like they were at the county fair and then they had these festivals and people who played good music were selected. It's not like that. It's like in LA on like 39th or whatever near Hollywood in like the Palisades, area just below Malibu. I mean, just below, Beverly Hills. There's, areas where casting events happening. So like Hollywood Casting Street, and it looks like a Soviet line for bread. Like these people get out and just these lines go around the street. Okay, and so these guys show up at the casting call. Hundreds of people are interviewed. And they ask them, like, are you smart? And they're like, yeah, I'm very smart. They're like, oh, that's too bad. And if they are like literally, and they're like, are you healthy? And they're like, I'm healthy as a horse. They're like, it's not going to do, because they know about the Vietnam War. They know about the draft. And so they're like, how can you see? Like, oh, I'm sorry. I need you. Can I wear my glasses for a second to read this? They're like, yes, you can wear your glasses for a second. And they're like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, I'm a little short for this. Can I stand on a box? Like, of course you can stand on a box. And they're super stoked because they have flat-footed, nearly blind 4 guys who are 4F, right? Out of 100 and some odd people that they've cast today. And one of them can kind of sing. He's British, right? So they're like, okay, we got a guy who looks okay. He's flat-footed. We got another guy who is, kind of from the Midwest, and they, this is totally just a show that's being cast. And then they make a show that has music in it. It's a lot like Gem. Like they make music for the show. Yeah. And like people, and they sell records, and it's all based on.
This almost sounds like Frank Farian and Milli Vanilli in a way.
Totally. Yeah, and it's weird because at that time you couldn't tell people.
They did those songs though. I mean, I don't know that much about Milli Vanilli. Didn't they just get caught like lip syncing to their own thing?
They never actually sang though, because one of them had a really thick like French accent and never would have been able to sound anything like the Milli Vanilli that we heard. So they were pretty much always just eye candy. And even when they wanted to sing, kind of like the Monkees, they would go up to Frank and they're like, we really think that we should be able to write this next song. And he would just look at him like, you guys really don't understand what this is, do you?
Huh.
But
It
like,
was a guy. It was a rapper in Houston, I
Those
think.
are
that did
good
all
songs. A lot of those songs that the Monkees did
The-
were good, but you're saying that
Don
those are
Kirshner
just
wrote them all. Don
he
Kirshner
wrote
wrote
them all.
every one of them.
But
Yeah,
they
he's the
sang
Max
those
Martin.
songs.
He's Max Martin. Max Martin wrote all the songs for Britney Spears and Backstreet Boys and NSYNC and the Beatles. Oh no, sorry, but you know the 1990s
But they
pop
performed
hits.
those songs. It wasn't a Janet
So
Dean accident.
like they also had other things playing the music behind them. But yeah, at a certain point they were learning how to play their instruments. And then they were demanding, they're like, look, Don, we wrote this song and we want to play it. And Don's like, no. And then they're like, well, we're not going to play your music anymore if we can't play at least one song that we wrote ourselves. And he's like, this is going to complicate paperwork because they're going to have ownership of that intellectual property. Right. So we can't do that. So then he's like, but look at this. So he has them all come into a meeting and they think they're going there to show him and to talk about this song. And he's like got a cigar and he's playing on the record, sugar, sugar, oh, honey, honey. And they're like, right? Not yet. This is before that. And they're like, what is that? No one's ever heard it yet. And he's just like, that's your new biggest hit. That's going to be the Monkees' #1. And then I think it's, was it Tor? Is it Peter Tork did it, right? I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. No, I'm just saying I could be wrong. Who punched Don Kirshner in the face? But I think Peter Tork punched Don Kirshner in the face. It might have been. Hold on. I think it was Peter Tork who punched him in the face, and yeah, it might. I think it was Peter Tork. So he punched him in the face, and that was the end of that, basically.
Wow.
But then the Archies were created and then he did all these other things. But then also he realized like you got to be really careful about pop stars that know how to play instruments. So avoid that, right? Because the other thing is there are plenty of musicians that will stay in line because that's always been the way. You got orchestral musicians that want to play their part. And there are even like these kind of jazz band guys you can bring in and just record them playing backup pieces and drums. Just have some guy play drums for a few hours. He can be on drugs. They don't care. So Don Kirshner knew how vaudeville worked and how like cheap you could make music. And he was trying to use that to his advantage.
So he was like the electric boogaloo guy for
pop music.
Okay.
Yeah. Totally
interesting. And then there's the guy, the producer of Ace of Base, which feels kind of relatable too, who was also ABBA.
So Dennis Pop, yeah.
And then there's all the weird controversy around him. I feel like we've discussed that before. Like
Dennis Pop is super key because he got killed he died super young, right? He died like 30 or 29 or something like that, 27 Club basically. But he was the master mixer for all these people. And had been under another guy who died before him, who I haven't studied very much. But the guy below him is Max Martin, right? His apprentice was Max Martin. So when we talked about Max Martin a second ago, who made all the, like Max Martin still will have like top 10 songs competing with each other. And he can just like wonder, oh, that's interesting that people liked that song I did more than this song I did. So maybe I'll use, and he like could just use Britney Spears as an instrument, like a MIDI controller, like make her voice do this, make her voice do that. Like
that's kind of, there's like I've read like that there's a way to like engineer, there's a science to earworms. So like literally like, and different people use it. Katy Perry, Lady Gaga, it's so formulaic that they're like, how do you make an ear? Like they've gotten to the point where it's not coming in this kind of like creative way like it used to. It's sort of like engineered that way to be an earworm. They're like, and that's why they say that like a good music producer, it's within 5 seconds or less of hearing a song, they know if it's going to be a hit or not, which I think is terrible because there's obviously examples where a song doesn't really come into the groove that quickly anyway. But it doesn't
necessarily mean it has to be a hit. Good music with musical merit doesn't mean hit. Sometimes it's the opposite.
Right, but I think that there's something to be said that they have an ear for the earworm. They know the exact formula.
It's not a new thing. It's just a company trade secret, right?
Yeah.
But more and more people are aware of it at this point because you can generate so more and more of the people are going to experience hypnotic music. But for a long time, like Jello, right? Jello, it's alive, right? Every jingle they had less than 6 seconds to tell it to you, so it had to be a perfect little chord structure, 6 notes, 8 notes at the most, right? It's kind of brilliant. Like, and you can do that. Like you can completely control someone's mind by leaving them on a cliffhanger. And that's what you see constantly. The cliffhanger is like, well, I'm unsatisfied, so now I need to go over it again and understand it more and see where it goes. I feel like Helter Skelter does that on purpose.
Sure.
Because there's a point where you feel like it should go to like, again, like it should go up higher, and it hits this like minor or sharp chord. And you're like constantly, you're like, I want to hear it again until they fix that, because they're doing it wrong on purpose.
I was
right?
driving home the other day. I can say this to you, Andreas, because you know the area, but Day Valley Road, when I was a kid, there was a local jingle for some place. I don't even remember what it was for at this point, but there was some place on Day Valley Road that was like 90760 Day Valley Road. And I'm driving home and I see the sign and I'm like, that's a jingle I haven't heard since I was like 10. Dude. So I'm just like,
Bad Boys Bail Bonds?
I've got one too. I don't know if you guys remember this one, but it was like, write to me, Stickly, P.O. Box 963, New York City, New York State, 10108. Why do I know that that address still to this day, right?
Yeah.
I woke up one morning, I was looking for the phone. I forget now I totally forget it. But like Bad Boys Bail Bonds, thank you for the loan. Baby, because your mama wants you home. Dude, that was a brutal one. Also, Mr. Chow's Chinese food. Mr. Chow's, that's me. Mr. Chow's the best. Chow down at Mr. Chow's. Mr. Chow's Chinese fast food. I don't know. San Jose is a bad place.
We're just throwing free ads out there.
I'm sorry. I feel bad. Yeah, I started this with
places
mineral
don't even
water.
exist anymore.
Yeah. So bad. Looks like a good neighbor is there. Barry Manilow still works after 30 years. Oh, Connecticut has a bunch of good musicians. That is where Peter Tork ended up, in Connecticut. Maybe he was from there originally, but he died in Connecticut. DARPA MK Ultra frequencies that were embedded into songs to trigger various brain responses. We talked about Peter, the band, the girls, Josie and the Pussycats.
Oh yeah, that's like the whole premise of that.
Yeah, right. Like, so in case you haven't seen the Josie and the Pussycats movie, like that's key to the whole idea of pop bands having a machine that's putting like shopping ads into the music.
Right. Or the assassination stuff that you see in Zoolander, because Zoolander is totally about that like MK Ultra Manchurian Candidate conspiracy idea. But they have like the song that they used to trigger it was Stop, Don't Do It When You Want to Come. And then they like in that movie, I'm sure I've shown you this, but I'll say it again because it's fucking kind of crazy, is that if you watch the World Trade Center movie by Oliver Stone, you never see the airplanes, right? But you have one scene where you see the shadow of an airplane at the beginning of the movie, and that hit the towers, and it flies over. The shadow of the plane moves over a Zoolander poster. So like I bet you can find it. Somebody else must have noticed this. The first time I watched it, I was like, wait, Zoolander is about mind control. They just literally just show you like a Zoolander poster in this movie to illustrate. See that?
Wow. What?
Yeah.
Of all things.
No, that's intentional, dude. No question. And what also is crazy is that Jay-Z's The Blueprint was released on September 11th, 2001. And if you double the Blueprint, if you play it twice, it's the exact same length as the World Trade Center movie.
Wow.
But yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, the Zoolander movie was brought to my attention by a girl who's a model. And, she wasn't really into conspiracy theories. And she's like, yeah, that's the gnarliest one. It's because it's all about like training models, and I never took it seriously. And I watched it, and I realized, oh my god, there is a lot in Zoolander, all about the Tavistock mind control, the whole idea.
Yeah, look at that headband. It looks like a play on the shining carpet in front of room 237. Except it's like dicks maybe or something. I don't know. It's like a play on the hexagon, but then it's not actually that. I don't know.
Yeah,
but yeah, no, you have these like it's like Jake Coates though when he coined the term synchromysticism. I've had my issues at times with his definition, but at the same time, I think it speaks to something where he says, it's recognizing profundity in the mundane. And you look at something like Zoolander, some of these comedies, and you sometimes will catch like really like deep stuff in there, and you're like, wow, is that like just writers who are like, yeah, I've been hired in this Barton Fink situation where I have to produce this crap? but I'm going to embed it with something that actually has meaning, because what the fuck else am I, why wouldn't they do that? Actually, I don't know. Like, it seems like that's what you'd want to do if you had any creative integrity at all, is just embed something with meaning into something.
This is where I think we've talked about like Gem and the Holograms and like He-Man and some of those like Filmation cartoons where it started as a vehicle to just pump kids full of like, I want to buy a toy, but you're sitting there like, this might be the pinnacle of my career. I've got unlimited resources. Like I'm in it. So why not express the golden bough through Gem, or why not express the concept of like Knights Templar defeating paganism through He-Man and all this, symbolism. If that's going to be the only tool that's given to you, then you use that tool to do the thing.
Right.
Do you think that predictive programming though is dangerous? Like, because on one hand we see levels where they're trying to show you stuff, but most of the time it's so hidden, and you're like, okay, now I feel comfortable watching an Oliver Stone movie because he's put like a little Easter egg there to let me know it's safe to watch the movie. Like, that seems kind of hard to know how to navigate through.
It's hard to know how to navigate it. I was just looking at that, like that Trump had reposted somebody's video that they had made, and he shares it on his social media. I think this is something that came out today or yesterday, where you're looking at a reference to the Unified Reich, and it's at the bottom of the screen, and it's just inserted there. But you're looking at old articles. It could be a matter that somebody was using just like some kind of like they had some resource to like old, like they're like, oh, we're going to go for this feel. But it's placed in there in such a way that it feels like a subliminal message. But who produced this? Did they even mean to do it? I don't really know. But it's definitely like it feels like a classic subliminal message, because it's right there, and it's subtle but not too subtle. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Dude, I was just I hate to say this, but I was just watching a new series that came out. It's all about how Hitler came to power. And I was like in the second episode, and I just have like stuff playing, but at a certain point I was like, God damn, it sounds like they're talking about Trump right here. The way that they said that it's not to be discounted that how Hitler was able. Are we allowed to say the H word on anyway?
You might as well. I just saw that South Park where Cartman dresses up as Hitler and nobody knows like what it means, and like they have to show him a video about it, and he's like, that guy's cool, could you watch it again? They're like, no. So they dress as a ghost, and it turns out that he looks like he's in the Ku Klux Klan, and so Chef runs away screaming. All right.
They were describing that how good of an actor he was, and that one of his skills that almost goes unsung, might be the wrong word, but that like one of his skills was that he could read a person or a room or a crowd and almost tell like what they wanted to hear, and then deliver that in spades. And that one of the key elements to his success, if you look back and you look at what he said versus what he did, he was like the master in just promising just crazy stuff that never would have been true. He never would have been able to deliver on it, never had the intention of delivering on it, but just saying the thing because he knows that that's what the crowd or the person wants to hear in the moment, and just consistently doing that so much, and that him and his whole inner circle all knew that it was always an act. It was always like in the TV show.
But the thing is, they had so many, like, okay, like you can't discount the Volkswagen social services, obviously for the ends of militarization, but like the Jugend having gliders, like they taught these kids to fly literally so that they could probably put them in planes and bomb people, sure, but they did elevate their society right after World War I. The comparison between World War I Germany and post 5-year plan Germany is just it's completely different. It's like Paleolithic to high civilization. Like, we look today at some of the things that they invented, and like the LED lithium diode bulb was invented in Germany during that period, right? And all sorts of things that we're used to today. It wasn't until after the war that we got to benefit from
the social programs actually were giving a enormous boon to Germany, who was humiliated following World War I, and they really had a drive to make up for that. And so they were doing really
Might be
well.
A problem there.
And then they, instead of just continuing on the trajectory that they were on, they started putting the same socialism that they were putting into social programs into the war machine. And not just the war machine, but also these kind of what we would call like pseudoscience stuff, like the eugenic stuff. And so they shifted their allocation of that money into these other things. And so that allowed them to be able to do what they did. But it's also like, it gets really convoluted because you're like, what would have happened to Germany had they not, if we didn't have Reichstag and we didn't go in this other direction? Because for Hitler, like the reason why he got a lot of the publicity that he did at a certain early stage was people laughing at him. He was funny because he had that fucking mustache and he's all freaking out like he's on speed.
Intentionally. Well, in the
Seriously.
series, they make a very strong point that he knew he was funny and that he actually told jokes and was very and that's why I was like, damn, that does kind of sound like Trump a little bit.
Yeah. You're gonna start to consider, like, wait a minute.
Trump
nuanced
loves
truth to
Trump
what
loves beef steak.
like,
He would never be a vegetarian, and I've never seen him paint. It sounds like a different president.
Right.
It's a fair point, yeah.
I think though that when you look at the implications of what we could have done to change things, we never do. It's like when people say, "Oh, everything's on Germany," but really everything's on Hitler. It's like, okay, then what did ideologically we do to be so divisive in the West, so that they felt like it was worth it to become militarization? I mean, first off, they're surrounded, so they're looking at the dictatorship of the monarchy, the dictatorship of the Rockefellerian oligarchy, and the dictatorship of the Soviet power. So they're surrounded in a sense, and there's even fascism below. So militarization seems inevitable if you're dealing with the Soviets and the British, and then the United States is allied with one of them. But the political, like philosophical, pseudoscientific things, is that necessary, or does that happen because of the isolation and because we're saying you guys are so different and so crazy that we're no longer comparing notes, and that leads them down this like weird path that might have been avoidable if more people were sharing data in the 30s, right?
Right. Well, I think people just were really at the top were really power hungry, and that's a big part of it. Is that, and people were easily influenced because they were really like stoked that they were doing so well, and they just wanted more of that. It was like the 49ers in the 80s were just like, can we just keep going with this? Like, this is really working for us. And so that turned into a kind of fanaticism. But I don't know if it's quite as simple as that. Yeah, I mean, looking at Mein Kampf, there's actually like I have a 1938 edition just because I didn't want to because I didn't know maybe they're different. Right. I don't know, like pre-World War II, and like he's explicit in there when he's talking about. He'll say a lot of things that you're like, isn't he just talking about the Nazis? But he's like talking about other people. But like, isn't he talking like in retrospect? Because hindsight's 2020. But like, he'll talk about like what makes a good dictator, like or a successful dictator, and he'll be like, a successful dictator can never admit being wrong about even the smallest little thing. Like, and it doesn't even matter if everybody knows that it's wrong. If you just stand by it, there's an energetic, because the nature of like people want to be able to be like that themselves. Like if they're wrong, to just be like, no, this, and so there's a tactic to that. So my feeling is like, if I'm looking at any politician, I'm very sensitive to like, can they admit when they're wrong? Because everybody doesn't love dogs sometime,
Trump doesn't have a dog, bro. Like, he's the only president to never have a dog.
He's
I'm telling
never
you,
had a pet.
Different.
Not even just a dog.
One of the only to not have a law degree or prior government / military service.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Somebody says Zelensky Adolf Zelensky, Putin. Now Zelensky is like today or yesterday is like supposed to be the end of his term. So they've said no elections for Ukraine.
What's the problem? Zelensky challenges West over hesitation.
So this, I'm sorry, like maybe I'm missing something here, but it sure looks like the country that we're arguing we need to fight for their democracy, et cetera, et cetera. Like this guy won on a peace ticket and then was pressured into not signing the Minsk Accord, which was like supposed to be the deal with Russia to like, like that was supposed to be the agreement. And like it's weird as hell that he's like not gonna allow for elections or not allowing elections because it's wartime. But man, isn't that kind of 1984 right there? We're always at war. Like, when are they not going to be at war now? Is it just going to be Zelensky forever? Because isn't that our problem with Putin, or one of our major problems with Putin, and why we call him a dictator is like not allowing for for us to And that's like, you could even talk about Hamas the same way. Hamas was elected in 2006. Palestine has only had one election ever. They won by 3 points. They barely made it, and now we're just like, oh well, you guys got to deal with what you got. Like, it seems kind of fishy, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like Zelensky's going to be in charge for a while, and we're not going to see the end of that for a long time.
Well, at least now we know what it looks like if you were to make Jon Stewart president. It would just basically be Zelensky,
That's true, but we already knew that. I thought, like, it was. I knew that. I think people really, that it startles me. Two kinds of things, right? And this is back to the movie thing. Like, one is when someone's watching a movie and they look over because they had a good time and they're like, "Oh, that must have been unplanned." This is a weirdly common reaction I get from people all the time. They're like, "That scene was so good. It must have been real. It must have been serendipitous and could not have been planned," which is never the case. Like, almost ever. There's a few times that happens, and that's cool. But for the most part, people do that reaction for something that's not. Yeah, I don't know. I forget the other one. That one bothers me the most.
Have you seen that old footage from? I gotta look it up here. I forget what year it was, but here, I'll send it to you. Where John McCain and Lindsey Graham are like in they're in Ukraine, and they're promising this group of soldiers what we're gonna do for them. Like, it's so creepy. The thing that really gets me is what
John McCain's a creep, bro. I don't mind saying it. Rest wherever.
Okay, yeah. So I just sent it in the private chat, but Lindsey Graham in this is doing this weird masturbatory thing with his hands, like he's like oiling up his hands while he's explaining to the soldiers like how we're gonna be there for.
Well, you all know what side that he plays on, right? Like, it's Lindsey Graham, like,
right?
Good for him.
It's your fight is our fight. Yeah, it's like you can see the whole future in this. And like, somebody commented when I shared this on Twitter, they're like, "I wonder how many of these soldiers are still alive." And like, seriously, dude, like this is a smaller part of a larger video that I cannot find online anymore. But they're just like straight up, like, it's like, what is he doing with his hands? Like, he does this like the whole time he's talking to them. It's like, is this? It just looks like a Bond villain thing or something. Like, I'm sorry if there's any Lindsey Graham fans out there. No apologies to you, but
someone's gonna be like, "That's carpal tunnel, you insensitive ableist." I have no idea.
right. It's like, people would say, like, I would have something to say about something that Biden said while he was running, and every fucking time they'd be like, "Don't make fun of it. That's a stutter. You don't make fun of people with a stutter." I'm like, dude, I'm not talking about how he's saying it. I'm talking about what he's saying. It was like, I wasn't allowed to talk about what he was saying because it's insensitive to his stutter.
Well, because when he says it, it comes through the same voice that has the stutter. So now anything that comes out of that is like infallible because of the stuttering.
I guess so. It was like, Obama being the explanation for why Obama got Secret Service protection earlier than any candidate in history when he was polling like super low was because they stated themselves, like, that officially, that it was because they were concerned because he was black. That as a politician, as a black politician, so that was enough for him to get this super early Secret Service.
Well,
I think
we should have gotten all our black ops.
It actually said black ops there, but everyone
black ops because he's black ops. So yeah.
No, I don't know. ICC has requested not issued arrest warrants for Netanyahu and Hamas leaders. What do you think about the ICC?
Yeah,
it's not just a suggestion.
I mean, they can't do much. They're the ICC. Like, they've most of they've been able to do is kind of get certain African countries to negotiate war crimes through the ICC. But there's no international New World Order as far as
right now. What's that? I'm sorry.
I was just saying the New World Order, like, technically they will never admit it exists, right? So the ICC doesn't technically have the power to like do anything, right?
Oh, right, I see.
Yeah. But there are protests in Israel, you're saying?
No, there's protests in Tel Aviv right now, and like there was before October 7th, it was 20% of the IDF was protesting the government of Israel. That was 10,000 plus soldiers had dropped out of their mandatory military service. Like, this is also crazy. You're like, what was the main driving force in the 1960s with the Vietnam War for the protests? It was largely that people knew that themselves, their loved ones, like their friends or family, could get drafted to go fight in a bullshit war, you know? But in Israel right now, it's like it's military service is mandatory for everybody. Like I can't even, can you imagine what it'd be like to live in the United States if every single person had to have contribute to the military in some fashion, in some way, you know? Like
I wish I could
you're
do a
not,
poll right now if you'd be into it. I'm kind of for it personally.
Yeah,
That's
I
one of the
mean,
coolest things about
honestly,
Israel.
I hate to almost admit that I feel like it might be a net positive.
Yeah, for
in
sure. That's
some
the word.
ways.
That's the word right there. I feel like for Israel, the military is a net positive because you can look at the treatment of Jews around the world. I'm not kidding here for the audience who thinks I am or something, but there's been a lot of really bad circumstances and made it really almost epigenetically likely to have inbreeding and malnourishment, lack of access to all sorts of resources. So now in the military, they have access to education, food. I mean, even the kibbutz, I think the kibbutz is one of those, the same thing. You start with the kibbutz before you get to the military. What do you do when you have orphans? I mean, it sucks to, like, when you think about a kibbutz, taking kids away from their parents and raising them in a kibbutz without parents sounds horrible, but not having parents, raising them in a kibbutz is a really great alternative to not having parents, right? So that's the thing. I think you have to look at Israel. Israel's changed so much in the last 100 years, and particularly in the last like 60. And so you can see the difference in the people, right? Like look at pictures of the early soldiers who are like really shrewd chess players. They're snipers. They're not the like amazing Mossad that you see now. Like today we have Krav Maga. We have these crazy like ninja warriors from Israel, right? And that is cool, I think. But not just that, discipline is good for people. And I mean, a lot of people I know from Israel are they're unhappy with what the military is doing. They're not unhappy with the fact that they like were put together with people and learned how to live, right? Like the military itself can be a good thing. And I think especially in a small country, you have more control over what the military is. So it doesn't, I mean, like when we associate the military with something bad, it tends to be around a war, but a really proficient military shouldn't have to go to war very often, right? So you look at
right.
France's military is incredible. It doesn't have to go to war very often. It's constantly doing humanitarian aid, which is obviously like a cover word for, interfering with other states,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
that's a great way to keep wars from happening. Obviously.
Right. It's extremely unusual, all the elements of this, because at no other point do you have a situation where somebody has an elaborate network underneath like residential areas and like buildings like schools and hospitals and all this stuff, and like, don't mess with this.
It's true.
Yeah,
I
but
really think that
like,
movie
how
might
do
have
you
said it
even,
better than I did. Yeah.
how do you navigate that? Like, how are you supposed to treat it? Because in war, like, that's, as far as I know, that's unprecedented. I don't know of another circumstance where it's been like that. And so yeah, my thing that I stress is when people talking about what's happening to Palestinians, it's like they're getting fucked from all sides. They're getting fucked by Hamas big time, who's not giving them the resources that they're supposed to be receiving, and they're turning resources around, like working against them in all these ways. And then Egypt and Syria aren't taking them, and I don't blame them necessarily. I mean, like, what are you going to do? Like, you have all these refugees. It's just like it's from everywhere. It's like the whole global stage. It shouldn't be this way. Like, and Russia having no part in this, like, has a lot to do with like America having the relationship it has with Russia right now. Like, we need diplomacy, and we're not seeing it on the global stage, and people are taking the brunt of that, in particular the Palestinians. So it sucks.
Yeah, guys, I just reading the page. It's no longer cool and woke to be pro-Israel, so we're gonna switch. It's now we're on the side of Oceania, so we're just gonna mid-conversation pivot. So now it's just pro-Palestine. No, I mean, I don't know. For the people who think that we're pro one side or another side, you've not been paying attention yet, I guess. That's you should. Yeah, but I agree with this. You should visit Palestine. I feel like.
You should, not me, but you.
You should be fruitful and multiply into Palestine.
Yeah, bring a pride flag. They love it. It's yeah.
But it
I
is
mean,
interesting that this is switched, right? I was just talking to someone the other day because I was on Instagram and I saw someone post the Los Angeles. I was trying to find it, like the road. They've got a big, what they call the billboard, and it says like every few seconds a child in Palestine dies, right? Trying to be in this all this anti-Israel stuff, and I'm like, this is Hollywood, right? Like I used to live in Hollywood, and by the way, like it used to be pretty pro-Jewish in Hollywood. I don't know if you heard that ever, but there's it's kind of
Right.
it's pretty weird to see that sign. And so then also to see it from some of these woke, like mindless people that I grew up in Santa Cruz, went to high school with. And no offense to the person I'm talking about, but then to see the thing and be like, well, this is interesting to me because what if I had shown you this 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5
Right.
years ago, last year? It's hard not to be like, I mean, what would you have said if I had shown this to you then? And there's just never going to be like a fair answer. Like, would you have
It's
called
weird
me?
because I feel like I'm kind of like getting like a version of what it was that I thought that I wanted like so many years ago, like all the way back, say 2007, up until a certain point where I've been highly critical of Israel, like online and like when I used to be on Facebook back then, like all through these years, like especially around 2012, sharing all this stuff, Naomi Wolf and all these things. And actually, Naomi Wolf on this particular subject, it's kind of like I'm shocked at how much I actually resonate with like some of her positions on this particular issue, because she was also critical of Israel for so many years. But then I'm seeing the way that a lot of these protests are going, and a lot of like not just blocking traffic, but things that are going on and what are being said. And I'm just like, I'm at a place where I'm like, I recognize nuances that I didn't used to understand like back then. And I'm seeing a lot of people like jumping into this because they just want to take the right moral position. And then it's like, it's so anybody that tells you it's simple, that's one of my biggest pet peeves right now, is I'm like, it's really not that simple. Like it's pretty fucking complex. Like there's certain things you could say moralistically are simple. War is bad. I agree. Like, and I don't excuse the government of Israel and the military of Israel in terms of like, I don't know, I don't actually know the degree to which they could be more precise with what they're trying to do, but the situation that they're dealing with is so fucking unprecedented that like I'm not even sure how like you would navigate that in any regular war tactics, because you can't, when you have like underground networks like that, like literally underground networks that are so they're so extreme. Fuck, I don't even know. But yeah, I have problems with a lot of what I'm seeing from the protesters, and at the same time, I'm somebody who's been so critical of Israel for so long. I'm almost like surprised at myself for being like, whoa, what are you saying? Like, do you know what from the river to the sea means and where it came from? Like, in Jeremiah, like that was the reading for October 7th. Like the Torah reading of that day was the particular verse that what included the particular verse that is where we get from the river to the sea, and like everything that means, so
I'm gonna get the
I don't
flag
know.
for people to get what you're talking about, in case anyone doesn't know what he's talking about. The blue lines on the flag from the river to the sea, right? So it kind of gives you a boundary of the intention of the borders of this land, in a sense, as well. It reminds me, though, of the Siege of Vienna because of the literally underground networks. It took 20 years for them to beat this war, and they were sieged for so long, right? Like 5 or 6 years at least of solid siege, while fighting mostly in these, underground tunnels. And people don't understand, like, that's where it goes after drones become this effective. So we're navigating really tight quarters, and everything we've heard about Palestine with like, oh my God, people are dying because they put their base next to a hospital. Well, that's about to be the situation in Israel too, right?
Right.
And so,
That's true.
yeah, the question becomes like, okay, like, is it, eye for an eye vengeance? Because like, I'm not really a fan of that approach if we could avoid it.
No, but the simplicity of the protests, places where they have issues, is that like you'll literally like Hamas is like three men with $11 billion between them that are like the heads of Hamas. There's like three main guys, and they don't seem to like, they're living it up. They're like, in the high castle while all this shit is going down. I'm sure that they don't probably feel good about what's happening to Gaza, but at the same time, like, they're not affected in the same way
End
as
all
all these
wars.
people.
Yes,
that
we'll have a war on war. We'll end the war. We'll have a war against anyone who wants to have a war. We'll fight them until we stop. That'll be the end of war, right? It'll all work out.
Yeah, I'm just
when
like,
you were showing that painting, all I could think about was this opening scene from Labyrinth. Now I'm wondering,
right?
If it's Jennifer Connelly versus David Bowie, who's the Palestinian and who's the Israeli?
Oh, Jennifer Connelly's totally Jewish, right? She's totally Jewish.
I would assume so. Yeah, so she's the Israeli guard with the nose Krav Maga, and then David Bowie, I guess, is
the Goblin Prince is Palestine. That tracks. Who produced this movie?
In Canada, they froze the accounts of the truckers. You know, there's like the Freedom Convoy protest, and they froze their accounts. And I was like, they can just do that? Like, isn't that like go against like their constitution in Canada? Like, isn't that like not? And then like the thing happened with Kanye, which makes it really ironic where I'm going with this, because I'm like, oh, they were just able to just, you know, fuck with his account like that. Oh, you said, you know, it's like, oh, I think these people might be, you know, controlling the world. Well, we'll show you. We'll fucking
we'll show you that we control the world.
Yeah, that's absurd, you know. And
control
so
the world.
I'm looking at it though, and I'm like, okay, you got 3 guys with $11 billion between them. I know that the banking in the Middle East is somehow distinct or whatever, but I'm like, if we can fucking free in Canada, and that, you know, much of a democratic place, everything how established Canada is, like if we can do that to them, why can't we do that with Hamas? Like that seems like a better tactic than dropping bombs and shooting missiles. Like, couldn't we just fucking freeze these motherfuckers' accounts?
I think, don't they use Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and things like that?
Is that what's happening?
Yeah,
is that what it is?
Yeah, plus there's like HSBC, but that's another reason why I think like crypto is interesting, because you look at like the QAnon, great timing for that. We're after 2 hours. Like the idea of if you look at the Bitcoin, which is up right now, it was really high and then went super low when Trump took over office because he signed all these anti-human trafficking bills. And the idea that human trafficking was using cryptocurrency to make a lot of these large exchanges, but also drugs. And so drugs were being targeted. And so when all of a sudden they busted Silk Roads and the economies were taken away from the consumer, the value went down. Meanwhile, it's been going back up under blue economies. Like under red economies, Bitcoin goes back down, dollar goes high. Under blue economy, dollar goes down, Bitcoin goes back high. And if you look at world traffic of Bitcoin, you start to see way more traffic of Bitcoin. There's a map that shows you like where all the transactions are happening.
I'm just imagining that like all these bull runs, it's really just Barney Frank ordering up like all these kids to his like underground lair.
Yeah, it's not necessarily Barney, but it's definitely a Barney. It's, you know what I mean?
A like Barney Frank in Minecraft.
Yeah, frankly, it's a Barney, regardless.
A Barney. If you get yourself into a Barney, though, that's what part of London is that where they talk like that? What is that?
Stoke-on-Trent? I forget.
Yeah, where it's like if you get into a Barney, it's saying that you got yourself into some trouble. Why? Because Barney and Barney Rubble, Fred Flintstone, Barney Rubble. And Rubble rhymes with trouble. So to get into a Barney is you got in some trouble because of Barney Rubble. It's weird. They talk weird, man. Lock, stock, and 2 smoking barrels talk.
You speak in code. Barney. Yeah, so get through that labyrinth. What was the point? I forget. We were talking about labyrinths. Barney.
The child,
child trafficking. So Bitcoin,
which is also the plot of Labyrinth, I might add.
Yeah, it's true.
Child trafficking.
Yeah, but Bitcoin is back up right now because there's a lot of market for Bitcoin, and like as dollar drops, like people put their market into the Bitcoin. But when people wonder about who makes the Bitcoin or who made the Bitcoin, you know, you've got the Satoshi Nakamoto, Samsung, Toshiba, Nakamichi, Motorola, which has been like the longest running gag. I think is kind of part of the joke is that it's set by Moore's law, so it's made by the technology. But who actually came up with the idea of promissory notes that are above and beyond and outside of government? Who else does that, right? Like for military, for Blackwater, for these purposes. So it seems to me really likely that it's a military initiated thing, the cryptocurrency Bitcoin. And there's several examples before Bitcoin, like Beans, which were corporate run as well, which Whoopi Goldberg was tied to Beans. And there's a huge circle of money, like Coke money, that like not cocaine money, but Koch brother money that was involved with Beans, right? For like Pepsi and Coca-Cola, or you know, whatever their marketing strategy was. So cryptocurrencies, if you're trying to trade like $20,000 or $100,000 or $1 million or whatever it is. $20,000 is a good example, to like an assassin or something like that who's working for the, an agency. It makes a lot of sense to be able to do that instantly with promissory notes in a way that can be, extracted later. So if you have a private bank that will accept those promissory notes for gold because they know they can exchange it later. So there's reasons why it makes sense, right? And if you can't duplicate them because there's a perfect system around it, you introduce that to the public and it disrupts the economy. So again, this idea that the red economy is weakening the Bitcoin through legislation and building up the value of the dollar, that's being beat by this deep state, we like to call it, but this idea of an internationalist coalition of corporatists that have been in the Banana Republic and everywhere else that have built up a non-state run dollar. And the weird thing about that is, like, I'm for it, right? If that's the case, because that's a Jacksonian dollar. That's a dollar outside of the hands of the Federal Reserve, outside of a centralized bank, in the hands of whomever can produce it. The problem with it is that it's tied directly to Moore's law. So it's built around who has control of technology. Well, by the point that saturation of the dollar has dropped, we now have a point where these corporations, these military industrial contracted companies, have control of technology. So they're always going to be ahead now of this system, which is emerging only after complete loss of any value to dollar, right? Everyone's losing all their value. So this is a jubilee.
Fuck.
Well,
Yeah,
I've got
like a
else.
clephotic jubilee or something, because it's not the thing in itself. But I'm looking here. Somebody in the
It's a
comments,
proxy for a
Gene
jubilee.
Splice, says BlackRock, Bitcoin, ETF, and the nations that have made it official currency are the boosters. That's an interesting point. That's very relatable to what you're saying in terms of technology. Well, I don't know how this all works with like Vanguard and BlackRock and all this stuff, but it seems like if we're going to talk about tentacles, like, it's freaking insane. Like, and we talk about like that they denied, BlackRock denied that they were buying single family homes in the United States and whatever. They're like, oh, we don't do that. And then it turns out I'm looking into it. I'm like, yeah, even on their website, they make that clear. And then I find out that the company that is doing it is a subsidiary, that it is absolutely connected to them. So it's all like,
well, it's a technicality, and being technically right is the best kind of right. and I've got an extra black pill on top of this, maybe I just don't understand economics enough. But if Bitcoin and cryptocurrency were supposed to be the answer to some of the woes of our current, market, why does it seem to me, at least, to follow all the same patterns of buy low, sell high, candlestick analysis? Like all
because it's just the same market as like what was working in the 1890s and was working in the 1920s. Like whales make money and Ponzi.
When the candlestick
actually
actually came from rice, like the actual candlestick method came from them like trading rice, as they would like go out to the battlefield and come back in, and they didn't have as many people, so like now the rice wasn't worth as much. But also, if Bitcoin and crypto is so radically different, like a complete different approach to this, like why does it seem to operate identical to regular currency?
Yeah, good question.
I mean, it doesn't operate identical to regular currency. It operates identical to commodity trading stocks. So the difference is really huge. Like the way currency works is promissory notes by banks. Banks have the capacity to trade 10x anything that they actually have, because it's digitized. It becomes thousands of times, and so we have exponential inflation. With commodity,
specific to fractional reserve banking.
Fractional reserve banking, but also just any sort of trading of promissory notes. Like you can trade promissory notes that are just bonds, right? They don't have to be inflatable. Like you would have to you have divisible bonds, right? And so the way bond system works is a lot more practical. Now, there was a time when they let people trade 10x the bonds that they had, and that led to the crash of 29. So, like there's a way to do it, though. And the other reason that it works is because promissory notes are really simple and really complicated. They're usually like paralegals and lawyers have to help sign them, but they're basically just two mutually agreeing parties that have made an agreement to the benefit, mutual reciprocity of both parties. So if there's not mutual reciprocity, there's efficiency of breach, where you can say, well, this doesn't really make sense to continue, and you can dissolve that bond. There's all kinds of things you can do with bonds that you can't do with receipts of, treasury notes, right? Like, so there's a huge difference there. And also everyone has to be mutually agreeing to the deal. So there's ways that they've proxied that with technology, but that's why people will get like a Dow or a NASDAQ that's like everything that's in the top 10 are purchased and they're held there. And if something drops, you know, it's like a Game of Thrones or something, like the lowest 10% dropped, the newest 10% risen, and then you're trading based on that, right?
I think it's, I don't know, but it feels to me like the plan is to let the people who are the most well-intentioned people like do the work and then to wait to co-opt it. Like Gene Spliced, I don't know who Gene Spliced is, but they made another comment. They said it's the introductory precursor of national digital currency, which will be instantly taxable, traceable, and expire. I think that's true. Like, I don't know, but I feel that
Melissa's
sounds
bored.
so
This is why Melissa's money is worth less in Canada. I'm just saying, you got to pay more attention to the money, you know? No, I feel like it's key though, because the difference between money and promissory notes exactly explains why it seems like a corporatist alternative to state-run finances. Because state-run finances inflate, which means that you can have bank loans and you can force people with the state's violence to pay those loans. Whereas it makes more sense for a corporation to continually entrap you to the obligations of a contract by giving you the benefit of the contract early, right? Which is like a drug addict. You give them access to the meal and then they pay afterwards. They're going to pay more usually, right? If you have to pay for your McDonald's up front, you get more upset if it's expensive.
Yeah. Totally.
All right. Well, we made it. We made it to the 10-hour mark. That was pretty cool. Let me pull up your pages real quick. Paranoid American, he's making some smutty stuff that's going to get him banned in Boston. And so I want you to call.
It's almost over.
Board.
There's only like 3 days left, and then I'm going to be promoting the Stanley Kubrick one. So we can just forget about this dark mark on my past.
Is there like a Moms Against Smut like place that if they don't like this they can go to and they can
lately it has been my Twitter DMs. I've gotten lots of angry messages there about people that they always like feel like they need to declare that they're going to unfollow me and why.
Seriously?
That's beautiful.
Over Illuminati?
Yeah, dude.
Are you for real?
Oh yeah, which is weird because no one's actually seen it yet. Like me and like 3 people have actually seen what's inside of it. So everyone's been forming their opinions on what it is based on the few panels.
What great advertising for you. I say any publicity is good publicity. Go for it.
Yeah, Stalin had a club like for people that hated Stalin called the Anti-Stalinist Club, and he had people donate money to it.
So if anyone doesn't like this, go to the anti-paranoidamerican.com and donate. So
and write your name and address down. If you could. Just give us where you live and any contact information would be great.
I question how paranoid you really are.
When I started, I figured I'd be at like an 8, but now after being in the space and talking to real paranoid people, I think I'm closer to like a 5.
You're not paranoid, you're pronoic. So pronoic is kind of like the opposite of paranoia, right? It's sort of the idea that awesome things sort of come together all the time. It's like life is like Mr. Magoo. You're walking and all of a sudden a board ends up right under your
this
feet.
Is one of my favorite books is Candide by Voltaire, which is essentially Mr. Magoo, but way before Mr. Magoo existed. And I think the mantra of that book was that like like whatever the present is like the best current state. I can't remember the exact quote of it, but yeah, if you've ever read Candide or Candide, I can't remember. I can't remember the pronunciation of it, but that is like the prototypical Mr. Magoo.
Right.
Yes. It's a short story.
L'optimiste. Yeah.
All for the best. That's it. Yeah.
Paranoia is the delusion that others think well of one. Actions and products of one's efforts are thought to be well received and praised by others. Mere acquaintances are thought to be close friends. Politeness and the exchange of pleasantries are taken as expressions of deep attachment and the promise of future support. Paranoia appears rooted in the social complexity and cultural ambiguity of our lives. We've become increasingly dependent on the opinions of others based on uncertain criteria.
You know, when people talk about how Steven Spielberg was so like really, really, really good friends with Kubrick, I don't get that impression by listening to anything that Spielberg himself really has to say about his relationship with Kubrick.
Yeah, it's more like a what about Bob
he's
kind of thing.
He's calling him paranoid. He's calling him like basically calling him delusional all the time, and then saying that Kubrick judged him for staying in Los Angeles because he called it quote unquote Sin City. I'm like, dude, it doesn't sound like you guys were tight. It sounds like you didn't take him very seriously and scoffed at his actual feelings.
This is actually a picture of a dramatic reenactment of Spielberg saying he's friends with Kubrick right now.
He said the same with Heather O'Rourke.
God. Well, speaking of Heather O'Rourke, if you love beautiful women and you love deep mysticism, then you should definitely check out David Charles Plate. He's got an amazing set of Synchronicity films, which we're going to start reviewing. I wanted to kind of announce secretly, but I hope that's okay for the people. David, just kind of throwing that out of the blue. But Will Morgan, we're going to start doing reviews of synchro mystic films by David to kind of help people get, a taste, jump into the water a bit about what these are and why they're so amazing. I think it could be pretty big. So
do you have any
exciting
Disney movies, David?
Yeah, I got some Disney movies. I got
movies?
2 Lion King movies. The old Lion King and the new Lion King, both with Donald Glover, and those are actually pretty good.
Okay,
but
maybe
yeah,
we'll review
I
one on like the Occult Disney podcast. We could do like a Disney Synctank.
Donald Glover
Yeah, I
plays
might even
Donald
have
Duck
more on my
in
hard drive.
DuckTales.
I forgot about it. Oh, I'm sorry.
Donald Glover plays Donald Duck in DuckTales. The new one.
Yeah.
All right. Love you guys.
This is America.
Hello.